Good evening and welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in our country over the past week or so. And as is the norm, we always have a packed agenda of issues to discuss. I want to begin by welcoming all of our viewers who are joining us on television from region number 5, West Coast Berbice. Welcome to another program of Issues in the News. To all of our viewers who are joining us on television from region number 6, East Bank, Berbice, New Amsterdam, Kanji, and along the Quarantine Coast, welcome to another program of Issues in the News. To our viewers and listeners who are joining us from Freedom Radio, Rob Street, Georgetown, welcome to another program of Issues in the News. And last but not least, to the thousands of you who are joining us on Facebook Live across the length and breadth of Guyana, the Caribbean, North America, Europe, and even further afield, welcome to another program of Issues in the News. And as I said, or rather as I would normally say, please share this program. Press that share button on your phone so that, or on the device that you're looking at this program on, so that you and your followers and your friends can join us in tonight's discussion. Share the program, share it wide and far so that all your friends and followers can join us in tonight's program. Padma Balwant is here, Rakesh Pare, Musa Ramdas, Ann Hill, Idris Sicharan, Lynette Mahabal, Suratan Prasad, Robert Ram, Pam Singh. I saw Neetu Maharaj earlier, Madbar Singh, and so many of you. Welcome to another program of Issues in the News. And please tell me in the comment column what questions you want me to ask. Tell me what issues you want me to address. Use the column section on the live to make this program interactive. I want to bring you in the discussion. I want to address the issues that you would like me to address. I would like to answer the questions that you want me to answer. So let's start. I want to begin by extending to all my Hindu brothers and sisters Shubh Ramnavami. I should have been in the Mandir tonight, but because of this program, I am here with you. Our Guyanese brothers and sisters across the country are in the Mandirs tonight celebrating the birth anniversary of Lord Rama. It also brings to an end 9 days of fasting for Navrat. Hindus all over the world are celebrating in Mandirs as well. So Ramnavami greetings to all my Hindu brothers and sisters, and indeed all Guyanese, wherever you are. So last week I spoke about a unit. Let me restart. Last week I spoke about one of the several measures which the government announced that it will implement to bring greater compliance with contractual obligations on the part of contractors who are executing contracts with the government. We have been speaking for some time of implementing different measures, different policies, different strategies to ensure that contracts are delivered on time, that breaches of contracts are minimized, and whenever these breaches occur, that the relevant provisions of the contracts are quickly activated and invoked so that liquidated damages and other sanctions, including termination of the contract, can be implemented very swiftly. All of this as part of the government's no tolerance for breach of contracts and delay in the execution of contractual obligations. The latest measure which we announced is the resuscitating and making functional units within the various ministries and retasking these units with the dedicated and specific responsibilities of evaluating contractual performance of contractors and to activate the relevant clauses in those contracts whenever there is undue delay, unnecessary delay, unjustifiable delay, fundamental breaches of contract, etc. And to take the necessary steps authorized by the contracts to impose sanctions on the delinquent contractors. These sanctions include liquidated damages, as I have said, forfeiture of bonds and other securities, and termination of contracts. And then under the law, under the Procurement Act, it also provides for further sanctionings. For example, blacklisting of contractors once the proper process is followed, but that's at a different stage. I also announced that as part of that initiative, a special unit will be established within the Attorney General Chambers and Ministry of Legal Affairs that would lend support to the units to which I am making reference in the various ministries, and to offer guidance, offer legal advice, and to take actions when it is felt that it is necessary to do so, including the institution of legal proceedings. Well, in certain quarters, that decision has been welcomed, and in other quarters, the decision has been criticized. In the sections of the press that have seen it fit to criticize that decision, they argue that this is another bureaucratic layer, that this is another attempt by the government to burden taxpayers with increased expenditures, that this is simply a smokescreen to fool the people out there, and various other criticisms have been leveled against this decision of the government. Well, permit me to say that this initiative ought not to cost the government and the taxpayers a single extra cent. If the memorandum is read, and I read it out last week, if it is, and it is, I believe it is in the public domain, if the memorandum in which that decision is set out is properly examined, the prudent reader will see clearly that it is not a decision to establish new units, but to make functional units that are already established in these ministries, and to refocus them in the direction of evaluating and monitoring the execution of these contracts. The intent is not to create another unit or another layer of bureaucracy. And if that, I don't know how that impression could have been conveyed, but if that impression was conveyed, I wish to reject it absolutely. The new unit, which will be established in the Attorney General chambers, will be manned by existing staff in the Attorney General chambers. No new staff is going to be hired for this purpose, at least not at this stage. I see the argument being advanced also that these contracts have consultants and they have engineers as part of the contractual apparatus. And that is true. But clearly, it is not working in the manner that it should. So, a government recognizing that that mechanism is not working, should that government not implement an additional measure or implement a new mechanism? Or should the government continue to perpetuate a framework without any change that is not working in the manner that it should? I don't understand the rationale. You have something, it is clear and undisputed that it is not working. Is a government not entitled to innovate, to make a change in order to get the system to work? It would appear as if anything our government does, there is a segment in the press that would find it objectionable. We cannot seem to get it right in their opinion. But it is our duty to persevere. I have often said, and I will repeat, wherever possible, that we don't pretend to be a perfect bunch. We will continue to try every day, to endeavor every day to improve efficiency in government so that we can, with greater alacrity and greater expediency, deliver better quality services and goods to the people of our country. That is a commitment to which we are inseparably welded and we have no intention whatsoever of resiling from that commitment. So, if we don't please that segment of the press, well then so be it. But we will continue to try to explain why we are doing things the way we are doing it, with the hope that we can address and perhaps debunk the misinformation that I believe is deliberately being peddled in these quarters of the press to which I'm making reference. Mention was also made of the engineers' bill. So, the engineers' bill was completed, sent, and there's a mechanism within our government that treats with bills that are completed before they reach Parliament. It goes to Cabinet, and from Cabinet there is a legislative subcommittee of Cabinet that examines the bill once Cabinet sends it to that committee. The engineer bill was sent by Cabinet to that committee for further examination. When that committee examines the bill closely, and if it approves the bill, then the bill goes straight on to Parliament. If not, then modifications has to be made. Modifications have to be made to the bill in accordance with the directions of that Cabinet subcommittee. That's the mechanism that our government has in place in respect of bills. So that committee reviewed the engineer's bill and made some recommendations to the governance structure of the bill. Just the governance structure. And that subcommittee has asked that that governance structure be refashioned and modified to make it more transparent and to make it more accountable. A consultant was retained and tasked with the responsibility of carrying out the directives of that Cabinet subcommittee. That is a work in progress. And as soon as that work is completed, then it will come back, that bill will come back with the amendments or the proposed amendments to the Cabinet subcommittee. And after that, if that process is completed, if the Cabinet subcommittee approves the recommendations or the proposed amendments, then the bill goes straight to Parliament. So that is where we are with the engineer's bill. Yes, there is a delay, but legislative drafting is a very complex science. It is a very time-consuming exercise. So it is not a process that can be rushed. Every word, this is the law of the country that you are drafting. Every word has to be scrutinized and looked at in a particular context to ensure that the intent of the drafter is clearly reflected or is reflected as clearly as possible. It's not an easy thing. It takes time. And it's not a small bill. It's a very expansive and very comprehensive bill. It will be ready, certainly, before the end of this year. Certainly before the end of this year. So, Kevin Samaru has made a very important point that new projects require more staff and better trained staff. And that is true. But in terms of this initiative, existing staff will be used. But as I said, it's a work in progress. We have asked the Gold Scholarship administrators to add a particular complement of programs to that scholarship program. Specifically, a set of training and a set of scholarships to be offered in the area of contract management, contract monitoring, and contract evaluation. In particular, FIDIC type contracts. And those who are familiar with contracts, in particular, the contracts of the magnitude that we are speaking about, that I am speaking about, would be au fait with FIDIC type contracts. And 50 current officers within the government structure will be offered scholarships. 50 one time. And they would be spread across the sectors. In almost every sector, we will select persons, including lawyers from the Legal Affairs Ministry. And all of, as I said, it's a work in progress. All of that is to enhance the government's ability and the government's capacity to monitor, evaluate, and enforce these contracts for the betterment of the people of Guyana. For the betterment of the people of Guyana. So thank you, Kevin Samaru, for reminding me to speak about the training and the educational pursuits that we are engaging in order to bolster the government's capabilities to monitor contracts and evaluate contracts. So, Guyana Power and Light, GPL, has been in the news, and justifiably so, in recent times. We have had an unusual high incidence of power outages at frequent intervals. The government, led by the President on this matter, has been very clear and candid. We have accepted that the situation is unacceptable. We have recognized what the problems are. We have highlighted what those problems are. We have accepted responsibility for the problems as the government, and we have committed to working assiduously to address those problems. You can't solve a problem without first recognizing and accepting that it exists. And we have done that. We have gone further. We have recognized that as a government, we have to address this and address it with every convenient speed. And we have expressed a commitment to do so. And we are doing so. We have also highlighted how we have reached where we have reached. And in so doing, we have highlighted the neglect that occurred in the sector under the previous government. I see we have been criticized for recognizing and highlighting that reality. Why should we not? We are not shirking our responsibility as a government to fix it. But why can't we say honestly and earnestly that there was rampant neglect, there was gross negligence, and there was a complete disregard by the previous government of their duty and responsibility to fix, or at least attempt to address the problem for 5 years. Why we can't say and remind the Guyanese that had the Epy and new AFC not used their one-seat majority to vote down the Amila Falls project, we would have had 165 megawatts on the additional on the national grid. Why we can't say that? And if we had that 165 megawatts, then we would not have been in the dire situation that we are in now. Why can't we say that? When that is the recent historical evolution of the Blackout saga. If we want to accept the problem as a country and as a people, then we have at each step of the way recognize the reality and place blame where blame has to be placed. By 2017, we would have had Amila Falls up and running, delivering to the national grid 165 megawatts. And it would not have cost the Guyanese people a single dollar. The misinformation that they peddled to accompany their vicious act of shutting down that project was remarkable. All the government of Guyana had to do was to sign a power purchase agreement that they will buy the power from Blackstone, the producer. A vicious and lethal propagandistic and propaganda campaign was launched. against that project, against FIP Motilal, against the Amila Falls company itself, against Blackstone, the investor. And we give them all the documents that they wanted. We flew them over the falls because Kaichur News used to put a front just the same thing that they're doing now with the oil and gas sector. They did it to Amila Falls until they killed the project. They said that the fall would dry up, and it was the dry season, and they published photographs front page to show that the fall's drying up, refusing to recognize that hydrotechnology requires a reservoir to be constructed to store the water, to prepare for or in preparation of dry season. They caused the investor to pack up and leave. And now they're balling with the blackouts. And we can't see what they have done to put the country in this dark hole. Well, we are going to see it. Because it's not a lie. The public records of the parliament are there to support it. And the people of Guyana know what happened. But a few in the media would like us to black out that, as we are dealing with Blackout. They want us to black out that piece of history. Well, we are not going to do that. We will illuminate it. We will shed light on it every time it goes into obscurity. So, for 5 years that the Epy and new AFC was in government, so when they were out of government, they killed Amila Falls. They denied the power grid and the people of Guyana of 165 megawatts of electricity. That's when they were not in the government. When they were in the opposition, they did that. When in the government, they added only 17.4 megawatt in 5 years. So they cut out 165. They killed 165 when they were out of government. And in government, they added 17.4 megawatt. And we mustn't speak about this? We mustn't speak about this? Let me tell you what we have done since we got into government in 2020. In 2020, we added, first of all, let me tell you what was the peak consumption in 2020 when we entered office. It was about 127 megawatt. Peak consumption, 127. We have added 9.6 megawatts in 2020. Almost 10 megawatts in 2020. In 2021, 47 megawatts with the new Arcilla system at Garden of Eden. 47. So 47 and 10 from the year before, 57. Then 2023, 5.8 megawatts. 2024, 28.9 megawatts. And with the new power that we are acquiring from the boat, the ship, it's another 36 megawatts when that vessel arrives. So for 2024, it's 28.9 megawatt at the Columbia station. All are not on, but it's 28.9 megawatts would be added. And then you have the 36 megawatts coming to be added with this new vessel. Total, we would be adding 127.3 megawatts from 2020 to now. 127.3 megawatts. We would have nearly be doubling the national grid, approximately, from 2020 to 2024. And they added 17 megawatt in 5 years. And we mustn't talk about that. And I'm not even speaking about the lack of servicing and the lack of upkeep of the generation facilities and the power lines, etc. I'm not even speaking about that. So we have added 127.3 megawatts. They have added 17.4 in 5 years. And we are doing this in less than 4 years. Less than 4 years. We enter government August of 2020. We have not completed 4 years yet. And we have already doubled the megawatts. They added 17.4, but they killed the Myla Falls, killed 1.65 megawatts. And we mustn't speak about that. I see social media commentators saying that we mustn't blame anybody. We got to fix it. Yes, we are fixing it. We are not saying we are saying that we are fixing it. We are saying that we are fixing it. But we have a duty to inform the Guyanese of the evolution of the problem. But there are certain people who don't want us to speak about that. But they want to highlight the blackouts only. So they want to run front pages and headlines about the blackouts. Well, we are not part of sensationalism. We have accepted the problem, and we have accepted that it is our duty to fix it, and we are working every day to fix it. There is nothing more we can do, and we will continue to work to fix it in the future. There has been thank you. Somebody has corrected me. They think I'm saying that the hydro is 1.65. I know. I never said 1.65. I said 165 megawatts. 165 megawatts is the Kamila Falls hydro. So let me get back to my narrative. Well, thank you for attempting to correct me there, but I was not wrong. So let me hear your views on this matter, because the blackout, the power outages have caused a lot of adverse comments on the social media and in the public domain, and rightfully so. I live in this country. You think I'm pleased about it? The president has spoken at length. You think the president is pleased about this? You think anybody would want to be in government and got to deal with this every day in the year 2024? We understand the gravity of it. We understand the frustration of people. We understand the anger of people. We understand it. We are enduring it ourselves. You don't think that we are affected by the blackout and by the criticism and by the cussing from both our own supporters and the opposition? We are enduring the brunt of it, the government. And why would we not want to fix it? Well, you think we are a sucker for punishment? We are doing everything possible to fix it. And that is why this latest acquisition was done as a national emergency. We had to work the entire weekend in order to get the contractual issues sorted out, negotiate Saturday, Sunday, Sunday night, Saturday night, Friday night. All the nights were spent with the contract and ironing out the technical aspects of it. Why? Because we see it as a matter of national priority and as a matter of national emergency. And that is how a responsible government behaves. But we can't fix it overnight. And I heard the reporters asking the president about the costs, etc. There is nothing, once it involves public monies, that will ever be kept secret by our government. Let me assure you. The money is public funds. It must be made public. And it will be made public at the appropriate time. But you get the impression that there are certain persons in the press who are more interested in pursuing a controversy, in pursuing sensationalism, rather than be interested in the solution. So these set of reporters, they seem unconcerned that this is a 36 megawatts being added to the national grid. They are more concerned about what it will cost. Whatever it costs, we have to pay for it because we want our people not to be in blackout. The government will spare no expenses in ensuring that you, the people, have electricity in your homes, whatever is the cost. But we will tell you what the costs are. But look at what their priority is. They want to sensationalize that. They want to write critical articles about the cost, rather than say, Mr. President, we are happy that we are getting 36 megawatts. How early will we get it? Those are the questions that they should be probing. The costs, whatever they are, they have to be ensured and they will be made public. They will be made public. So, I'm still looking at your comments, and yes, Nikhil Sankar is saying blackout has been stymieing productivity. Of course, it has been grinding productivity to a halt. It affects productivity, and that is why we have regarded it as a national priority. We never for once complain how the consumption rate has escalated beyond reasonable predictability. That is what has happened here. We have to accept the reality. But the reality is that a year ago or 2 years ago, it may have been extremely difficult, if not impossible, to expect the growth in the consumption that has taken place over the last 12 months. You go to every mandir in this country almost is air conditioned. Every mosque. And these are not new buildings. These are existing buildings that never had air conditioning units before, but they have them now. Persons, people, Guyanese have much more disposable income now. Hundreds, if not thousands of people who couldn't afford an air conditioning unit 10 years ago can now afford an air conditioning unit. And they are installing them. And I have not touched new buildings yet. I have not touched the new housing schemes yet. I am speaking about existing ones where people are using up more electricity. 10 years ago, not every house may have had a fridge. Today, every single house in this country has a fridge. And nothing is wrong with that. Nothing is wrong with that. But there has been an unprecedented, to use an overused word, surge in consumption in electricity, triggered by a number of circumstances, including climatic conditions. We are not complaining, we are just explaining. And we have pledged and committed to deal with it. So let me move on. The UN Security Council has issued a very important statement on the Guyana-Venezuela situation. The statement calls upon both sides to respect the court's decision, to respect the court's process, not to do anything that would escalate conflicts, to allow for the matter to be resolved by the International Court of Justice, and to allow the status quo prescribed by the interim measures granted by the court and the Argyll Declaration to continue to prevail, and no party should take steps to affect those two important developments, the Argyll Declaration and the interim measures. But the truth of the matter is that Guyana has done nothing, absolutely nothing, that can be interpreted as violating the Argyll Declaration or violating the interim measures or violating the process of the ICJ. So this statement issued by the UN Security Council, though directed to both sides, is really directed to Venezuela. Because there is no complaint anywhere, even from the Venezuelans, that we have done anything to escalate the situation. Venezuela has done many things, physically and legally and institutionally. Physically on the ground and institutionally and legally by passing a law in their parliament purporting to annex Essequibo to Venezuela. But we welcome the statement, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has issued an appropriately worded statement as well. At Geneva right now, our government has a delegation headed by Ministers Unesh Waldron and Joe Hamilton, where we are supporting we are attending actually, and part of the delegates at a session on the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. I want to make the point that when this initiative was first launched in 2014, the PPP government supported it and voted in favor of it at the UN. This is a second decade, because that decade was from 2014 to 2024. This is a second decade, and once again, we are there. The PPP government, represented by two of our ministers, are there to support it again. I see the usual racemongers have said that Minister Onej is hypocritical in her support and in her speech. And they are blaming our government of undermining Afro-Guyanese in Guyana. The usual thing. And they are using the case of Epy. Epy. And let me briefly explain and remind the people out there of the history of Epy. Epy was formed as an umbrella body consisting of nearly over 100 Afro-Guyanese organizations across the country. And President Granger pledged to that, to the cause, the United Nations cause. And that body presented itself as the body that will lead in representing that cause. And monies were given by the APNU AFC government. And then continued by our government. 2020, 100 million. 2021, 100 million. 2022, 100 million. In total, they collected over 500 million. And it cannot be accounted for. But that's not the whole story. Over the years, after the first set of money was received, this larger body was hijacked by a smaller body, a smaller grouping hijacked the larger organization and formed it into a limited liability company owned by those, that small few, that group that hijacked the larger organization, and ostracize that larger number of organizations from participating in the management and decision making. So the larger Epy was hijacked by a small crew, and they formed it into a company, Epy Inc, I believe it's called. And they have been the beneficiary of the money. And what have they done with it? I did a breakdown. They have super salaries. They have a lot of food, dietary expenses. And then when you look at scholarship, they have 14 million. But you look at salaries, 58 million. Rental, millions. The running cost is what ate up over 85% of the money they are receiving from the government, with 15 million left for the development of Afro-Guyanese as contemplated. The development of Afro-Guyanese communities is what is contemplated by this decade, this motion that was moved by the UN. They can't point to a single project of substance. After receiving 500 million, they can't point to a single project of substance that they have done. What we did, after realizing that they don't have audited statements, and when the audited statements were actually received, they confirmed the complaints of the members, the larger group that were left out. Because the larger group, numbering some 50 organizations, approached the government and say, look, you're giving all this money and we are not benefiting. One organization has captured the entire big umbrella and they are running the show and we are not benefiting. They made their statements public in the press. And our government decided that they will give the money, but to 50 organizations rather than that selected few that hijack the people's organization, the larger body. And because we have done that, we are racist. So one organization wants to benefit. We are giving the same money to 50 organizations so that more than 5,000 people can benefit, but 5 would like to benefit, and they must preside over this money. And you don't mind, but what are they doing with the money? Well, look at the balance sheet. Everyone who is hearing me, go and look at their financial records, and you will see how they have spent it. And ask them to point, after spending 500 million, let them point to one project that we can go and look at, or you can go and look at, after spending $500 million. And when you take corrective measures, you are a racist. You are a racist. This is taxpayers' money. So the government distributed the money as we budgeted for, but we gave it to 50 or more organizations who submitted their documents, their plans, and they got the money. So those who were deprived, the leadership, this selected few, who hijacked the people's organization, obviously they are angry because $100 million has been taken away from them. $100 million. So the PPP is racist. And who we take the money and give it to? Who we took the money and gave it to? 50 Afro-Guyanese organizations across this country. And it is all documented. My brothers and sisters, this is where I have come to program time. My operator has signaled to me that we are now past program time, so I want to thank you very much for spending the past hour with me, and I'll see you next week Tuesday as we continue our discussions. Thank you very much. Take care and may God bless you. Enjoy the rest of the evening and enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you.